On Tech News Today, another day, another horrible exploit, this one affecting more than half the world's web browsers. Also, when Comcast buys Time Warner Cable, who wins? The answer is Charter Communications. And finally, Microsoft gives some details about its Xbox-exclusive TV shows and movies. All that and more coming up next.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Monday, April 28th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster, easier, and cheaper. Post your job to 50-plus job boards with one click. Try ZipRecruiter for a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And by ShareFile. Enhance your workflow. Send files of almost any size easily and securely with ShareFile by Citrix. Try ShareFile today. For a 30-day free trial, go to sharefile.com, click the microphone, and enter TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgin.
I'm Jason Howell.
Tech News Today explores the big stories of the day with some of the world's best journalists. Our guest co-anchor today is Reed Albergotti. Reed is a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and he's also the author of the book Wheelmen, which is about Lance Armstrong and his nasty drug habit. Welcome, Reed.
Thanks for having me.
I haven't read your book yet. We've got it on order, but I read the New York Times review of it, and it sounds incredible.
Thanks. Yeah.
This Lance Armstrong character sounds like he was even better at dodging doping allegations and tests and stuff like that than he was at riding a bike uphill.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that will make you really sink into this book and not be able to put it down is that it's really not just about Lance Armstrong. It's about the whole conspiracy, all the businessmen, the sponsors, the agents who helped him get away with it. It's really a much bigger story than just one athlete cheating.
Yeah, well, it sounds fascinating. Can't wait to read it. Why don't we get right into the news? Microsoft revealed a new Internet Explorer flaw of the weekend. The zero-day vulnerability affects more than half the web browsers currently in use worldwide. Eric Hesseldahl is a senior editor for Recode, specializing in enterprise computing, and he joins us here today. Welcome, Eric.
Hey, guys.
So can you tell us more about what kinds of attacks that this vulnerability makes possible?
Yeah, it's classic kind of a drive-by situation. And when you say it affects more than half of the browsers, technically speaking, it affects about 56%, and that's Internet Explorer version 6 through 11, but most of the attacks are really taking place in IE 9 through 11. So also, by the way, the interesting footnote, this is the first major vulnerability that's going to affect Windows XP that's no longer supported by Microsoft. So there may be some interesting follow-ons to that. But basically, it's a zero-day vulnerability, and they're not quite sure how they're going to fix it yet. FireEye is also saying that it is the attacks are being carried out by an advanced persistent threat gang that it has seen before. Doesn't know very much about it, but so there's a lot going on with this one vulnerability.
So just to be clear, Microsoft is basically saying that if you've got Windows XP and you have Internet Explorer, you're out of luck. We're not going to do anything about it. Is that right?
Specifically to XP and also those older versions, yeah, that's basically it. Now, if you're on a newer version of Windows, then you are supported. The other thing is that they're saying is that if you use some of the default security options that are set up in Internet Explorer from 9 through 11, I believe it is, you should be okay. This vulnerability, some of the default security options are that are turned on by default. You should be okay.
Wonderful.
So
now,
Eric, I'm wondering, is FireEye actually, did they do this as part of Microsoft's bug bounty hunter program? And if so, I'm wondering if they got compensated, since XP is no longer being supported.
Well, no, I don't think, if it's not supported, I don't think unsupported software would be part of the bug bounty program. And I don't think FireEye was the one that actually discovered this. Microsoft was the one, I think, that first came out with the disclosure. But FireEye is one of the leading security research firms. They're also the ones that they bought Mandiant not so long ago. And Mandiant was the one that basically popularized this phrase "advanced persistent threat," and they did so with the infamous report about the unit of the China's People's Liberation Army. That's basically the hacking cyber war unit of the China's army, and so that's where that advanced persistent threat phrase comes from. It basically means it's a gang of determined attackers, maybe state-sponsored, maybe not, maybe organized crime, we don't know, who specialize in very sophisticated attacks, usually multi-threaded attacks that will basically get at one part of your system and then come at you another different way, and basically use these escalating series of attacks to get what the ultimate target actually is.
Now, Eric, this the attacks originate in Adobe Flash. Is that correct? And isn't Flash implicated in just way too many security vulnerabilities these days?
It is. Apparently, it's a variation on a well understood technique, and my understanding is that there's nothing in this about the vulnerability that Adobe, which is the company that makes Flash, can actually do. I think it has more to do with, and this is where my understanding of how these things work actually begins to fall down the wayside. But I think it has to do with the way that Internet Explorer actually interacts with Flash. And so, best thing to do, and I've got a story up on the site since yesterday about this, is to click through to Microsoft Security Advisory and read it, because it gives some very detailed instructions on what you need to enable, what you can disable. Also, there's FireEye has an interesting post up on it that I have a link to as well. And then one that I didn't get that came out later, which I may go back and add in. There's down to the clicks instructions from Sophos Security on their Naked Security blog on what you can do to make yourself basically resistant to this attack.
Fantastic. Well, Eric Hesseldahl, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News today to explain this latest vulnerability. All right. Be well. Thank you. You can find Eric Hesseldahl at recode.net, of course, and also on Twitter at AHESS247. Well, in a sec, we're going to catch you up with what's happening with Comcast. But first, I want to tell you about ZipRecruiter. If you're a manager, or if you own a small company, or if you own a medium-sized company or a large company, one of the most important things that you can do is hire the right people. It's hard to hire the right people, especially now that the economy is better than it was a few years ago. Most of the best people already have good jobs, so it becomes harder and harder to find the very best people who are still out there and looking for work. The problem is that these people are scattered all over the internet on dozens of job boards and also social media. If everybody collected onto one job site or one job board, this would be much easier to deal with. But in fact, people are scattered to the wind. And that's where ZipRecruiter.com comes in. It enables you to post your job posting to 50-plus job sites with a single click. It's quite amazing. And it also posts your job on social networks like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And this is a great idea, but the problem is if you're posting to 50-plus job boards plus the social networks, you're going to get back a ton of applicants. And fortunately, ZipRecruiter helps you with that part of the deal as well. What they do is they automatically highlight the best candidates, so you don't have to wade through an endless ocean of unqualified candidates. ZipRecruiter will highlight the best ones for you, and then you screen them, you rate them, and then you hire the best person fast. ZipRecruiter is a must-have service for anyone who's hiring and wants to hire the very best people, and I highly recommend it. Try ZipRecruiter and find out why they've been used by over 100,000 businesses. Right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for a free 4-day trial by going to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Tech News Today. Well, we've been keeping you up to date with Comcast's proposed $45 billion acquisition of Time Warner Cable. Comcast announced a plan today to hand 3.9 million subscribers over to cable operator Charter Communications. The divestiture is worth about $20 billion and is intended to keep Comcast's control of the cable TV market after the acquisition to under 30% so that regulators won't freak out and prevent the acquisition. Joining us to explain this is Cynthia Littleton, who is a reporter for Variety, and she's calling in by telephone. Welcome, Cynthia.
Hi, thank you.
So everybody's focusing on Comcast on this deal and also Time Warner Cable, but what does this deal mean for Charter Communications?
Well, in a way, they certainly get something that they wanted very much, which was growth. They're picking up a bunch of subscribers, depending on how you slice it, a net of about 3.5 million in terms of subscribers that they will manage. And that was what they wanted. John Malone, I think, would have loved to have had the bigger prize, which would have been, of course, all of Time Warner Cable, but that didn't happen. So they were able to. Comcast knew going in that they were going to be under, of course, all kinds of federal pressure to win approvals for the deal. So they immediately said they would serve up at least 3 million subscribers to divest, and that amounted to more than crumbs for Charter to pick up.
Now I'm curious about this. Did Comcast get to select Charter instead of Cox, for example? I mean, this basically replaces, Cox goes down a peg, don't they, in this deal, as Charter sort of leapfrogs them in terms of market share, if you will.
They do.
Who gets to pick?
Do.
Who's the kingmaker here? Is it Comcast?
Well, I mean, I'm sure that, as with anything with fiduciary duty, Comcast is, would have an obligation to seek out the best deal, knowing that Charter had been primed to pounce in acquisition mode. Obviously, they would have been, and knowing that Charter was probably knocking on the door the minute that after they got over the surprise, the minute the Comcast Time Warner Cable deal was done, knowing that they were going to have to be selling some subs, and Charter is very much in the market to grow. I don't have any inside knowledge, but I'm guessing Charter was aggressive. Of course, Charter and Comcast had been discussing the possibility of carving up Time Warner Cable between the two of them already, so those conversations had already started. Comcast, I'm sure, was very comfortable with the idea that Charter could finance this deal, and the way that they've structured it, of course, where John Malone is involved, it's going to be a very complicated deal, all designed to be tax efficient. And the way they've structured it, they really, both companies, Comcast and Charter, have been able to horse trade their subscribers and their systems so that they can, get the best for both companies. They can consolidate their holdings in certain regional areas, the South and Midwest for Charter, the Northeast for Comcast, the Northeast and California for Comcast was important, where Charter has a few, I want to say, like Orange County area. So it seemed like it actually, it's a pretty beneficial deal for both, depending on, I honestly haven't had a chance to really look and see how the market's reacting to the price that Charter is paying. They're certainly paying, the estimates are 20 to 22 billion. That's not chump change, but Charter really wanted to grow, and this allows them to do what they sought initially. Not quite as much, but they are leapfrogging a few pegs up the list of MVPD providers.
Hey, Cynthia, this is Reed Albergotti. Great coverage on this. I'm curious. Maybe this is because I'm a former New Yorker. I lived there for 10 years, and it can be a challenge, to put it politely, to get good internet service. I'm just wondering if you could give us a sense of what this means for the consumer.
Well, I think people in New York right now that have Time Warner Cable are probably pretty happy about this, because Comcast is, I think they are demonstrably among the cable operators. They are the best in terms of investing in technology, rolling out high-tech services. I personally am saddled with a Time Warner Cable DVR, and believe me, I was happy to see this deal go down, because it is just an awful service. A top industry executive mentioned to me a couple weeks ago in a completely different forum that Time Warner Cable was really a company run for shareholders, not for subscribers, over the past, probably since they spun off from Time Warner proper. And that was so telling to me, again, as a paying customer of Time Warner Cable. They just have not kept pace. The broadband is okay, but everything I've heard about Comcast, it's just their speeds are better, their lines are better. Of course, there's huge issues that come up with Comcast swallowing up Time Warner Cable from a macro policy and consumer perspective, but just from a, using my user interface. If anybody's ever tried to find something on Time Warner Cable's VOD lineup, I mean, it's just not easy. And Comcast has, for sure, as they show you every year at the cable show and the tech shows, they put a lot of energy into the user experience, ease of navigability, different ways to slice and dice your schedule and your listings and all kinds of other products. And, you know, if you believe what Comcast and Charter are saying, is that scale and growth and tighter concentration in geographic markets will allow them to innovate and roll out even more whiz-bang services. So, you know, it remains to be seen, but certainly it is for people that are dealing with Time Warner Cable. It should be that will remain Comcast subscribers when all the dealing is done. It should be good news from a just, you know, what you're paying for perspective.
Now, Cynthia Littleton, this divestiture is designed to satisfy regulators about control of the cable TV market, keep it under 30%, as I said in the opening here. But the real issue, from my perspective, is their dominance of internet service, which I've heard is going to be above 50% after the acquisition. Is there any concern by regulators? I mean, this really changes everything. Whether Comcast has 30 or 50 or 70% of the cable TV market doesn't seem to really have a huge effect over the future of television, whereas their ability to have 50% of mobile broadband completely determines the future of television to a certain extent, because those who would disrupt the current television model, the Apples and the Amazons and the Googles and others, now are in a very disadvantageous position with Comcast, or will be after the acquisition, because they just own the market. They can essentially dictate the terms of internet connectivity. Is that something that regulators, do you think, are sufficiently concerned about?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I think the regulatory scrutiny of the whole deal is you know, probably the lion's share of the focus is going to be on the impact on broadband service. I've heard anywhere from 30 to 50%, maybe 40% is the real number. I think now that this deal has been announced, this divestiture deal, it'll be easier for people to kind of crunch the numbers and see, okay, where will Comcast come out in terms of number of homes passed and number of homes that actually take the service. You know, so there's two different metrics there. But yes, I mean, it is a big concern. Is that too much power to put in a gatekeeper type role to one company? You know, of course, if you ask Brian Roberts, it's that allows for the ability to do all kinds of innovative things and roll out products and services that we're not even thinking of, because a company will have that kind of scale. Others, you know, if you ask Netflix, they're very kind of grumbly about a deal that they recently reached where they are paying Comcast to make sure that their traffic is well served and isn't slow. On the other hand, you could say, well, Netflix sucks down a lot of broadband speed for all their programming. So should they not have to pay a little extra rather than a mom and pop e-commerce site that uses, you know, a fraction of what Netflix needs to deliver all of its programming? I mean, these are huge, important, sort of large philosophical and policy issues that will be, you know, debated, I think, ad nauseum over the next 9 months until the regulators really get down to voting. There will be a lot of public forums to give, you know, the cynic would say, to give the impression that the public has a chance to weigh in. Mm-hmm. So I don't doubt that this will be vetted, but you know, and absolutely the broadband concentration. You might even see more Comcast having to make more concessions on the broadband side. Okay.
Well, Cynthia Littleton, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News Today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, you can find Cynthia Littleton at Variety.com and also on Twitter at Variety_Cynthia. Well, Microsoft rolled out details over the weekend about its original TV shows and movies exclusive to Xbox. These include Halo projects by both Steven Spielberg and Ridley Scott. Don Chmielewski is a senior editor for Recode and joins us to tell us about all this. Welcome, Don.
Hey, Mike. How are you?
Great. How did I do with your last name?
Very well for an
Really?
amateur.
Oh, great. I'll take it. Well, is Steven Spielberg still on board to create a Halo TV series? And if so, when would this debut?
That's a really interesting question, Mike. It turns out to be more complicated than you or I might suspect. About a year ago, Microsoft made an announcement with the launch of Xbox One that Steven Spielberg would be adapting this popular game franchise as a TV series. Now, that was a year ago, and once again, Microsoft and its Xbox Entertainment Studios is touting this new series on the horizon, but they offer no dates. They say that they're making progress, but they have no announcements as yet. Indeed, no video to show.
Now, you wrote that Microsoft's Xbox Entertainment Studios is struggling. What's the problem exactly?
It appears to be having some initial growing pains. It was launched with the hiring of Nancy Tellem, a veteran CBS executive. She was their entertainment president and is regarded as a very digitally savvy executive. In the time since, the studio has been in startup mode and has encountered some difficulties. We're hearing from potential partners that deals aren't getting done in a timely fashion. There appears to be a bit of disorganization. Then that there's some confusion about just what exactly Microsoft plans to do in terms of its business model. Will this entertainment be offered as part of Xbox Live as sort of as a bonus for the subscription? Will the shows be offered for purchase? It's just not clear at this point.
Now, Xbox Live has about 48 million users, as I understand it. Is there any research, indication, or evidence that a significant percentage of these people want to watch TV? For example, Halo fans play Halo because they love playing video games. Do they want to watch a Halo TV show or movie?
Well, that's a really fair question. Microsoft discovered about a year ago that more than half of the time that its users were spending on Xbox Live was spent not in playing games against competitors on the game console, but rather accessing online entertainment. So they were using the console to access video services such as Netflix or Hulu, I believe, is available through the box, or other forms of entertainment through Xbox Live, which signaled to Microsoft a demand for a broadened entertainment experience.
Now,
this is Reed Albergati.
Go ahead, Reed.
Go ahead. I was going to ask you if I personally can't remember a great video game adaptation. I think people have tried it in the past. Is Microsoft kind of keeping themselves enclosed in this video game box a little too much? I mean, look at Netflix. They went out and got, a series like Orange is the New Black, House of Cards. I mean, shouldn't they be sort of looking more toward that model than as opposed to finding video game shows to play on the Xbox?
Well, you accurately recall the less than storied history of film adaptations of video games. There hasn't been a tremendous success. That said, Microsoft believes that it has a lot of original intellectual property that has a certain resonance with people who are on Xbox Live. In presentations here in LA, the executives were talking about not just Halo, but Gears of War and Forza, which is a racing game, which they feel they can develop perhaps with fewer hurdles than they're encountering trying to cut deals with outside studios. And I'm sure you remember that there's been a long history in trying to develop Halo as a film franchise, and it actually at one point had Mr. Jackson attached, and it fell off the radar because of problems. But there was a version that was available also through Machinima, the YouTube channel that's popular with the game community, that actually received decent numbers. So there appears to be some appetite, at least, for this for entertainment rooted in video games.
Now, Don Chmielewski, your piece had a really interesting tidbit to it, which is that it appears that the Xbox Entertainment Studios chief, Nancy Tellem, doesn't actually use the Xbox. She's not a user not a fan apparently. That kind of freaks me out. I mean, here's a fairly broadly distributed mainstream platform with dozens of millions of users at least, and one of them is not the person who's running this studio. Do you think that's a problem for the future direction of this studio?
Well, this is how the executive who recounted the anecdote certainly interpreted Nancy Tellum's account as sort of evidence of lack of firsthand experience. Nancy roundly rejects that as saying she is intimately familiar with the device, although she didn't necessarily claim to be a gamer. It was a curious revelation in our reporting. That said, presumably she has the reason Microsoft hired her is because she has an instinct for finding high-end premium entertainment, the sort of shows that Xbox is going to need if it hopes to compete with some established players like Netflix or Amazon, or indeed with anything else on television.
Well, Don Shlemewski, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News today and telling us about this development.
Thanks so much for your time.
All right, you can find Don Shlemewski. Boy, sorry about that.
That's all right.
There's a lot of consonants in that name. Wow. You can find her at recode.net and also on Twitter at DawnC331.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Well, Silicon Valley's Stanford University is building an experimental game controller that detects how the player is feeling. It's designed to tell if you're excited, bored, happy, sad, or afraid. That pretty much is the list of emotions that I feel about the development of this game controller. With us today is our third Recode interview guest, Eric Johnson, who wrote about it today, and he joins to tell us all about it. Welcome, Eric.
Hi, good to be here.
What's the point of an emotion-sensing game controller?
So, when you're normally playing a video game, you know how you feel, but the game often doesn't know. The game is often a very sort of orchestrated affair where it's been developed sometime for years and years and sort of planned out from, get from point A to point C. But along the way, you have to pass through point B. And the thing is that a game developer might not really know how the player is feeling through that process. There's a little bit of guesswork, there's some testing along the way. And so the idea is that down the line, a controller that can actually tell what the player is feeling could be a huge boon to testing, where all of a sudden you have an actual biometric information about here's what the player is going through, and here's maybe things that we could change about the game. Here are things that we could do to change the game live as they're playing it to respond to these biological signals.
Now, what are the signals? I mean, what are the sensors that this device is using to determine what the emotions are?
Sure. So there's your pulse, your heart rate, and there's also your breathing rate. You can see there you're playing a little video from the Stanford video. That's Corey McCauley, is a PhD candidate I talked to for the article. And the graphs that he was showing there a couple seconds ago were showing, for instance, if you're holding your breath, then you'll see the graph change. You'll see that that it's noticed that the way, there you go, there are the graphs again. It changes. It's called impedance. So it's basically how long it takes for an electrical signal to travel from one end of the controller to the other, traveling through your body from one hand to the other. And the more air that's in your lungs, the more impedance there is. The harder it is to get through, the slower that path is.
That's amazing. That's an amazing way to detect.
It's actually pretty similar. Yeah, no, it's actually pretty similar to what you might see at the gym on like a treadmill or elliptical. Those little kind of metal things you can hold on to and get your heart rate there. It's pretty similar to that. In fact, the controller that I tried, the experimental prototype, it had pretty much identical metal panels there.
Now, this is Stanford, of course, and that's right in the heart of Silicon Valley in Palo Alto. And oftentimes, projects like this tend to get spun out into companies because, Silicon Valley. What are the chances that the PhD candidate behind this project intends to bring it to market? Do you know?
I don't think he has a set goal in mind. I think right now he's just focused on his PhD. But I do know that he said that he'd definitely be interested in seeing some sort of consumer application for this, both either with games or also with other applications. He was talking about sort of the possibilities for applying this to cars for measuring road rage or for operating machinery to tell, is the driver asleep. There could be definite applications out there. And as far as business applications, Stanford's hardly the first to really look into this field. It's called biofeedback. Plenty of big companies, including Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, have already kind of looked into ways to do this, and some of them already have active experiments out in the wild.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. I mean, I wonder about the commercial, the advertising possibilities with this. I mean, I'm sure companies would love to know whether you're, feeling happy or sad, or let's say hungry at any given moment. Have you thought about that? Is this, do you think it's something maybe a Facebook or a company like that might want to acquire and just gather even more data about users?
Well, Facebook's apparently buying everything these days, so who knows there? But no. I mean, there's definitely a potential there. Although there's of course then a privacy concern where with games, people can easily rationalize like, okay, I'm okay with this game knowing how I'm feeling about the game. Once you get into advertising, everyone starts to get a little bit antsy there. But yeah, no, there could definitely be. I'm not sure about hungry. I'm not sure if that's something they can measure by what you're holding.
But next generation.
But happy or excited or anything there, I think there's definite potential.
Yeah, hungry is my main emotion when I'm playing video games. Also nauseated. Well, I want to thank you, Eric Johnson, for coming on Tech News today. It's really fascinating research.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you can find Eric at recode.net and also at Twitter at HeyHeyESJ. Awesome. Well, we're going to tell you in a sec about some problems with two of the leading smartphone handsets in the industry. But first, I want to tell you about ShareFile. ShareFile is the way to send documents over the internet. The worst thing you could possibly do from a security standpoint is simply attach a document and send it out over the internet because, of course, email is not a secure method of transport in most cases unless you go to extreme measures, which hardly any of us really do. The right way to send files over the internet is with ShareFile, because you're not actually sending the document as an attachment. You're sending a secure link that will allow the recipient to download it from the cloud. When they do download it, you can be notified if you choose to be notified, and it'll tell you who's downloading it, when, and how often. You can even set how often they can download it. It's really great because it gives you peace of mind about what happened to the document you sent. Now, of course, people who are really concerned about security use ShareFile to send documents. People who are really concerned about whether or not their large file will make it through corporate firewalls and so on. Of course, a lot of these corporate firewalls will stop any attachment over a certain size, and there's no way for you to know what the size is unless you get an error message back. But ShareFile is also great. It's great for both of those uses, but it's also great just for any sort of document that you want to send over the internet because it gives you peace of mind and control over what happens with your document. I recommend it highly. I recommended it to my wife. She loves it. She recommended it to our accountant. He loves it. Now he recommends it to all of his clients. It's, the growth of ShareFile is a reflection of how easy it is to use, how nice it is, how secure it is, and how fully functional and just high performance it is. You got to give this a try because when you try it, you'll see what it's like to really have a lot of control and awareness about the documents you're sending and have peace of mind as well. So sign up today for our free 30-day trial. No obligation. Just go to sharefile.com, click the microphone at the top of the homepage, and enter TNT. Remember, visit sharefile.com and enter TNT. You got to try this. It's really great. Well, both Apple and Samsung have issued alerts about problems with their best phones. Some iPhone 5Ss have faulty sleep-awake buttons, apparently, and a small number of Galaxy S5 handsets have cameras that just don't work. Apple promised to replace the faulty parts. Samsung promised to replace affected phones. So if you've got a problem with one of your phones, make sure you take action because they will address it. Well, in other news, Google posted new information today about the progress of its self-driving car project. Some of the facts they posted are actually jaw-dropping. For example, Google's self-driving car sensors can not only detect and recognize objects such as buses and pedestrians and know what those objects are, but also things like traffic cones and stop signs held up by crossing guards, and it changes the behavior of the car according to those objects. It can even, this part blew me away the most, it can even read the hand signals given by bicycle riders in real time. So when a bicycle rider signals a right turn, the car slows down, gives them more space, whatever it takes to avoid turning that bicycle rider into highway pizza. Reed, this is a really astonishing technology, don't you think?
It is. And as a bike commuter in San Francisco, I actually got kind of terrified when they mentioned the bike signal thing, because I don't think I ever make the official bike signal. I just kind of point to where I want to go. So I'm wondering if that would confuse the Google car and cause it to run me over. So it just, I mean, it's amazing technology. And I'm half joking about the bike signal thing, but I mean, it does bring up these issues, like a computer looks at the world in this black and white way. And I wonder if how long it'll take to get to the point where it can see all these little gray areas. For instance, a cyclist not making the proper signal.
Exactly. It's not perfect. And even when this technology comes into the real world, it's not going to be perfect, but it will almost certainly be many times better than human drivers on average. And so that's really the key thing. What's fascinating about this is that the computer system that they're currently using already, and of course they spend most of their time in Mountain View, they logged over 700,000 miles, can simultaneously see hundreds or thousands of individual objects and detect them and deal with them in real time. And it also has this really interesting thing. If you see the video, it has these virtual gates that basically tell the car, okay, go up to this invisible gate, stop until XYZ happens. For example, the car that's coming drives by, and then go, and then you can turn and be on your way. But I would trust this over. I've driven in Mountain View. It's a scary prospect. People are nuts out there throughout Silicon Valley. The driving, you have these like super hostile drivers. I would love it if everybody was using self-driving cars. I think it would save a lot of lives.
Yeah, I think, and obviously computers probably can't get road rage, although they probably do in science fiction movies. But I mean, that's one of the huge issues, right? I mean, you drive on 101 and people are just bumper to bumper almost, trying to pass each other through little tiny nooks and crannies. I mean, this definitely could solve huge issues. I wonder, has Google said anything about, how quickly they might roll these things out? I mean, we're talking 10 years, 20 years. I'm really curious.
I know that in a year or two ago, they were talking about aggressively putting these on the highways, and it's all about, partly it's about the safety aspect and partly about the legality of it. They've actually won a lot of victories in a lot of states in the country to test self-driving cars. But there'll be states like Nevada, for example, will probably legalize this very soon. But once it's legal in California, which, I mean, I don't know what Google's expectations are. Personally, I think it'll happen within the next 5 years. Once it's legal in California, forget about it. It'll essentially be a nationwide phenomenon because 1 in 8 Americans lives in California. It's the biggest state. So I think it's coming soon. And the reason it's coming soon is because, again, it'll be trivially easy to demonstrate that self-driving cars are way safer than human drivers. So I'm looking forward to it. Well, Reed Albergotti, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News Today as our guest co-anchor today.
Thanks so much for having me. It was really fun. First time I've done anything like this.
Well, hope to have you back soon. And are you covering the F8 conference, Facebook's conference on Wednesday?
I will be there. Yeah, it's my first time covering it. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. We've actually reported, and Recode, not to mention their name again, has reported that they are probably going to announce their advertising network, a mobile ad network, on Wednesday. So I think that'll be a big step in Facebook's business. There'll be some other announcements as well, I'm sure, and we'll be ready for some good coverage on WSJD.
Excellent. Well, thanks again for coming on Tech News Today as our guest co-anchor.
Thanks so much.
And, of course, you can find Reed at the Wall Street Journal and also at Reed Albergotti on Twitter. Well, we want you to subscribe to Tech News Today. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Just go to twit.tv/TNT and subscribe. If you like YouTube and want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, it's youtube.com/TechNewsToday. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tech News Today TV. You can also join our Google Plus community and circle our page by searching for Tech News Today on Google Plus. You'll find everything with that search. And we want to hear from you as well, so send us an email at tnt@twit.tv or leave us a voicemail by calling 260-TNT-SHOW. And don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight. My name's Mike Elgin. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.